Stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk and honor his memory. Last night we had a total of approximately 7,000 leads. As of this morning, thanks to your great work, we have over 11,000 leads that were called in to the FBI. And we are running out every single lead that we can. Every one of those leads will be run out. The arrest is a testament to the dedication of good law enforcement being great, and partnerships in law enforcement, which I've tried to highlight as my tenure as the director of the FBI. There is no better relationship for law enforcement than the FBI to partner with state and local authorities, and you've seen it here in these last few days.
We are indebted to law enforcement across the state who's worked seamlessly together, local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and our federal partners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're grateful for everyone who worked together in such a short amount of time to find this person and to bring justice. I want to thank the public who has been so engaged, reviewing videos, helping us with sending in tips and helping us get to.
They told the public the case was closed before the smoke even cleared, as if justice could be packaged and delivered within hours of chaos. Tyler Robinson was their answer, dragged into the spotlight, handcuffed before the night had even ended. His mugshot became the face of relief, printed across every newspaper, broadcast on every channel, and shared online as though the danger had been vanquished. To the public, it looked like efficiency. A threat had been neutralized. Order had been restored. But when you strip away the polished press conferences and the carefully scripted statements, the cracks in his rushed narrative are impossible to ignore. Tyler Robinson wasn't found with a smoking gun in his hands. He wasn't caught fleeing the scene or standing over a weapon. In fact, the evidence tying him to the shooting came together far too quickly, almost unnaturally so. Within hours, investigators painted him as a lone wolf assassin, a rooftop shooter with a clear line of fire. Yet, the timeline of events raises questions that demand far more scrutiny. Eyewitness accounts were conflicting from the start. Some swore they saw a movement behind Kirk, not above him. Others reported hearing two shots with slightly different echoes, as if more than one weapon had been fired. And then there's the most damning detail of all, the bullet. The one pulled from Charlie Kirk's body. Forensic science teaches us that no two gun barrels leave the same markings. A bullet is like a fingerprint. It tells the story of the weapon that fired it. But when experts examine that bullet, the story it told didn't align with Tyler Robinson's rifle. That should have been the end of the case against him. It should have forced investigators to pause, to consider the possibility of another shooter, another angle, another truth. Instead, the detail was buried, brushed aside in favor of the cleaner, easier story. A suspect caught, a nation reassured. And so the narrative hardened. Tyler Robinson, villain killer, the man behind the trigger. But the deeper you look, the more one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Tyler Robinson may never have been the man responsible for pulling that trigger at all. The rifle they claim Tyler Robinson used, the supposed murder weapon paraded before the cameras, carries a detail the prosecution hoped no one would notice. It doesn't even match the bullet pulled from Charlie Kirk's body. That single fact should have been enough to stop the narrative in its tracks. Ballistics are the bedrock of forensic truth. A bullet bears microscopic grooves, unique signatures etched by the barrel that fired it. When tested against Robinson's rifle, the match wasn't just weak, it was non-existent. The ballistics don't line up. The science doesn't support the story. Then comes the trajectory. Officials insisted Robinson fire from a rooftop, aiming down into the crowd. Yet when forensic analysts revisited the scene, the angle of entry into Kirk's body told a different story. The wound wasn't consistent with a downward shot. Instead, the path suggested something else entirely, that the bullet may have come from behind, or even level with Kirk's position. Such a discrepancy isn't a minor oversight. It rewrites the very scene of the crime. It means the official account of Robinson perched above, rifle in hand, was more fiction than fact. And the witnesses? Their words echo louder than any press release. Multiple people reported hearing shots that didn't sound like they came from overhead. Others described movement in the crowd itself, a shadow slipping through the chaos. Some swore they saw Kirk stumble forward, as if struck from behind, not from above. These accounts were there from the beginning, raw and unfiltered. But as the days passed, their voices faded, drowned out by the drumbeat of the official line. What we're left with is a puzzle that refuses to fit together, a rifle that doesn't match, a trajectory that contradicts, witnesses whose testimonies were conveniently sidelined. These aren't minor cracks in the case. They're gaping holes that should have stopped the rush to judgment cold. But instead of pausing, officials buried the inconsistencies, silenced the doubts, and pressed forward with a story polished for public consumption. Behind the curtain of certainty, the truth was smothered, and every piece of overlooked evidence screams the same haunting question. If the rifle didn't fire that bullet, then who did? It happened at a packed event, the kind of high-profile gathering where security is supposed to be airtight and the atmosphere carefully controlled. Charlie Kirk was scheduled to take the stage, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. Cameras stationed at every angle to capture the moment. Uniformed guards lined the entrances. Plainclothes security blended into the audience, and crowd control barriers shaped the flow of people like a funnel. To the public eye, it looked impenetrable. Nothing could happen unnoticed in a place so heavily watched. And yet, in a matter of seconds, order unraveled into chaos. A single shot cracked through the noise of the crowd, sharp enough to cut through chants, cheers, and conversations alike. Screams erupted as people ducked, scrambled, and shoved their way towards safety. What began as a structured event dissolved instantly into panic, the kind of scene where seconds feel like hours. Witnesses later described the sound as disorienting, some insisting it came from above, others swearing it came from within the crowd itself. In the aftermath, before adrenaline even had time to settle, a name surfaced. Tyler Robinson. Within hours, he was in handcuffs, led past flashing cameras as if the conclusion had been pre-written. There was no press conference laying out evidence, no detailed forensic review shared with the public, no reconstruction of the crime scene to explain how a bullet found its mark despite the layers of security. Instead, what unfolded was something eerily different. The case wasn't presented as a mystery to solve. It was staged as a script already finished. Authorities didn't offer theories or possibilities. They delivered certainty. Tyler Robinson was the shooter, they said. End of story. His mugshot sealed that certainty in the minds of millions who saw it. But when justice is reduced to headlines and sound bites, the details, the critical details, get buried. The lack of transparency wasn't an oversight. It was a choice. And that choice raises a question. Was Robinson truly the threat caught that night, or simply the character cast in a role written long before the first shot rang out? But here's where the cracks don't just appear. They split open, tearing the official story apart piece by piece. The very foundation of the case begins to crumble under the weight of overlooked evidence and unanswered questions. Start with the bullet itself. The recovered round, the one pulled from Charlie Kirk's body, didn't belong to the type of rifle Robinson allegedly used. It wasn't just a mismatch in markings. It was a different class of firearm altogether, another weapon entirely. Forensic experts know these distinctions aren't subtle. They're glaring. A bullet tells the truth of its origin with microscopic precision. Yet this truth was ignored, left to collect dust while a narrative of certainty was sold to the public. Then comes the digital trail. Robinson's phone data, the GPS timestamps, the cell tower pings, place him away from the scene at the very moment the fatal shot rang out. Technology doesn't bend to political pressure or courtroom theatrics. It records cold, hard facts. Those records contradicted the story of him perched with a rifle above the crowd. But instead of forcing investigators to reconsider, the data was buried beneath headlines screaming, "Shooter caught." And still, the witnesses refused to fade into silence. 3 separate individuals swore under oath that the shot came from above, not from within the chaos of the crowd, not from ground level, but from overhead. One even described a shadow darting back across the rooftop, slipping away as panic spread below. These aren't vague recollections. They're precise details from people who were there, living through the terror. Their voices should have shifted the entire course of the investigation. Instead, their testimony was treated as noise, an inconvenience to the polished version of events. Finally, the cameras. The one surveillance feed that could have ended all speculation, that could have confirmed or shattered Robinson's guilt, went dark. Conveniently. Not minutes before, not after the chaos. Right at the moment of the shooting. A technical glitch, officials claimed. But how many times can coincidence line up so perfectly before it stops being coincidence? When truth doesn't match the arrest itself becomes a lie. And in this case, every ignored bullet, every overlooked timestamp, every silenced witness points toward one chilling possibility. The wrong man was framed while the real shooter slipped away. So why keep Tyler Robinson in custody? Even as the evidence buckles under its own contradictions? The answer isn't about justice. It's about narrative, about control. When the public is shaken by a high-profile attack, officials don't want uncertainty. They want closure, a name, a face, a villain to parade as proof that the system works. Robinson became that placeholder, the neatly packaged scapegoat designed to calm fears and restore a sense of order. But beneath that facade lies a far darker motive, protecting whoever really fired the shot. Because here's the detail almost no one talks about. On that same day, amid the chaos and confusion, another individual was briefly detained. Not a rumor, not speculation. Detained. Pulled aside, questioned off record, and then released. No name ever entered the system. No mugshot ever surfaced. No official follow-up was filed. It's as if the person never existed at all. And yet, whispers remain. Why was that person released so quickly while Robinson was paraded in front of cameras? What did investigators see or hear that made them cut someone loose without documentation? The silence around that shadowy figure speaks volumes. Even more telling is what happened next. Robinson's defense team, initially vocal about challenging the state's weak evidence, suddenly shifted strategy. Instead of building a case around hard proof of innocence, the mismatched ballistics, the phone records, the eyewitness contradictions, they leaned into quiet negotiations, pushing for mental evaluations. It was a move that baffled many observers. Why abandon a winnable fight? Why retreat into psychological assessments when the facts themselves screamed out? The answer may be as unsettling as the case itself. Pressure. Pressure not to dig too deep, not to tug at the loose threads that can unravel everything. What looks like a questionable legal strategy may, in reality, be damage control, designed not to protect Robinson, but to protect the narrative, to keep the story sealed before the truth can spill out. And that's the chilling part. Because when defense attorneys stop defending, when justice bends to silence, it's no longer about guilt or innocence. It's about preservation of power, of image, of secrets that someone doesn't want unearthed. So ask yourself, what happens when every critical piece of evidence fractures under scrutiny? If the bullet didn't match the rifle, if the timeline places Robinson away from the scene, if the one surveillance feed conveniently went dark, and if eyewitness accounts were cast aside, why is Tyler Robinson still branded the face of this crime? The answer isn't found in law or science or truth. It lies in the machinery of a system that values perception over reality. The system doesn't crave truth. It craves closure. It doesn't thrive on accuracy. It thrives on narrative control. A frightened public doesn't want complicated questions. It wants simple answers. A name, a mugshot, a storyline that fits neatly into headlines. Tyler Robinson became that answer. He wasn't chosen because the evidence pointed to him. He was chosen because his arrest tied a bow around chaos, because his face on a screen reassured people that danger had been contained. And that's where the darkest truth emerges. When closure becomes more valuable than justice, innocence becomes irrelevant. Facts no longer drive the outcome. Optics do. And the wrong man, under the right spotlight, becomes a perfect scapegoat. Robinson's continued imprisonment doesn't speak to guilt. It speaks to utility. He is useful. He is a sacrifice that keeps deeper questions from being asked, the shield that protects whoever truly pulled that trigger. So the real question isn't whether Robinson is innocent. That answer is already written in the inconsistencies, in the data, in the silenced voices of witnesses. The real question is far more dangerous. Who needed him to look guilty? Who benefited from the quick arrest? the buried evidence, the vanishing of another detained suspect. Those answers cut to the core of power, influence, and control, territory far more uncomfortable than a lone gunman narrative. And until that question is answered, this case can never be called closed. Because it isn't closed, it's concealed, sealed beneath a story written to pacify the masses, while the truth waits in the shadows, demanding to be uncovered. What do you think? Was this a botched investigation?